you have offices all over the globe. How do you coordinate the social media strategies with different communication officers and different offices?
IOM is, unlike other agencies, a bit more peculiar, especially when it comes to communication. Our structure is very decentralized, and we operate on projects, meaning that the majority of our budget is allocated to the field, and our headquarters, including our media and communications division, is very, very small compared to other agencies. That makes the communication effort slightly different than a more centralized or larger UN agency. And especially on social media, it requires a lot of work, let's say backdoor diplomacy between
What you
my...
in what sense? When you employ the expression backdoor diplomacy, what you mean by that?
Because many times, often we have to rely on our goodwill from regional offices and missions to operate within the framework of a central division. On social media, the job has been relatively difficult in the sense that before I joined in 2016, there wasn't really a person in charge of social media. There were many people who were using the accounts, but what was lacking was a strategy and mostly a strategic vision, which is what I was hired to do. And so I quickly started to spend time to understand what the issues were before bringing in my own vision.
Yeah, but your background was already in communications in another UN agency, or you came from the private sector?
No, I was working for Kofi Annan at the moment of my interview. I was managing Kofi Annan's digital presence, and before that, I spent 4 years, almost 4 years, working for a permanent mission in Geneva as a communications officer. And before that, I worked in the private sector, mostly advertising. But I also have a PhD in international history and politics from the Graduate Institute of Geneva. So I think I was able to maybe merge my analytical approach, analytical academic approach with my passion with media and communication. And I'm hoping so far to have done a decent job at IOM.
Yeah, indeed, as you mentioned, that there is this sense a few years back that social media wasn't that relevant into the toolbox of the communicators for international organization, which indeed has proven to be true, right? We know how important they are by accident. If you don't have a strategy, you can't really manage, because everything that you bring, your knowledge base from other communications tools and methods, you will deploy through the social media tools. So it makes sense that it's being taken more seriously. Also because we know information can be weaponized too, and it has become a contentious point in the information warfare we are living. So tell us about the challenges at the moment in Sub-Saharan Africa too. You have many offices there, the important regional offices. So you've been working in tandem with them to try to manage communications strategies related to COVID-19 and the internally displaced people.
In which region?
The Sub-Saharan Africa. You have the North Africa offices, and you have the West and Central Africa offices, right?
Yeah. Just to quickly elaborate a bit on what you said earlier before I answered the question.
The question of not thinking that social media strategies important in the toolbox of the communicator, of the modern communicator. And you bring this experience in communications, you know, crisis, how to deal with certain aspects of communications from the day-to-day implementation, as well as the strategic long-term vision. So I would like you to speak about both. Tell us how does that inform your work, and more specifically now in relation to managing the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis in Sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa.
Yes, I'm going to answer first to the previous question and then to West Africa in a couple of minutes. I think most UN agencies, unless you're taking maybe UNICEF into account, are still struggling to embrace the full power of social media and digital communications. I believe there is still an intergenerational misunderstanding between those who are still relying on traditional forms of communication, which of course are extremely relevant, and maybe younger generations, of which I'm part, that see also the power of social media. And on our side, perhaps we tend to underestimate the relevance of traditional forms of communication, but it's also fair to say that they do the same when it comes to social media. So there is a tension, and I know many other colleagues from the UN. They live every day through the same tension, but I think it's a healthy tension. There is a lot of space for improvement, and there is a lot of space to understand. We need, of course, to understand that social media is not simply speaking tweeting. It's not simply speaking posting a photo or an image on Facebook. There are more than 15 to 20 different platforms with over 300 million users. New platforms being created every 6 months, and most of all, unlike journalism, traditional forms of communication, where sure you use different new tools, but at the end of the day there is a relationship between the public information office or the spokespersons and the media. In social media, we basically have to reinvent ourselves every 6 months, and so that takes a lot of energy and a lot of capacity to adapt to new challenges and new environment, which personally I am very comfortable with, but it is indeed very challenging. But anyway, it's a fascinating field to be in, and I'm really enjoying the work done by IOM and especially by our media and communication division. We are very small, perhaps compared to some of our UN agencies, but we work as if we were a newsroom, and we're very flexible. We're all able to multitask, and we do a lot with the resources we have. So I'm very proud of that. To answer your second question, we do, of course, have several regional offices, and our regional office in West Africa, Senegal, Dakar, has been involved on the COVID-19 response as much as everyone else. As you know, most of us had to work from home during the pandemic, especially during the lockdown, and so have many of our colleagues in Senegal. So I think after an initial shock, what IOM has done is trying to raise awareness about the risks of COVID-19, especially not just in urban cities, but also among rural communities. We have an interesting project called Migrants as Messengers, which is now in its second phase, which is attempting to raise more awareness on the risks of irregular migration in West Africa. And part of the budget over the spring and the summer has been allocated to employ returnees from Libya and other places and use them as a tool to reach out to their own communities and raise awareness about the risks of irregular migration. So it's been, we're still working with them, of course, but it's been an interesting experiment. And we have, I'm not the best person to report on that because we have a project manager in Dakar, but I can comfortably say that the team has been very active and the returnees have been very active. We have produced lots of blogs, lots of social media content, and they also have a dedicated platform called, if I'm not mistaken, coronawestafrica.info, where you can check content in French and Spanish, and all the activities of awareness raising done by the team in partnership with returnees, because we believe that peer-to-peer communication is a much more efficient approach than an institutional, form of an institutional campaign, where basically the UN tells you how to think or how to behave. We think a peer-to-peer approach communication is far more effective. And so far the results have confirmed it, but we are also learning more as we create more projects and understand more how these innovative forms of campaign work.
Yeah, I have seen that the United Nations Agency for Refugees also has stimulated entrepreneurship in some of the camps, and there was even a group that was dedicating itself to produce content and manage accounts. They were offering their services on Twitter, I saw the other day. So that seems like an interesting take. Both, as you said, peer-to-peer communication sometimes can be a lot more effective, right? Because people know who they are talking to and can talk to them in the way they like to listen, know the ways of storytelling of that community. So it's great to hear that there are so many good efforts in training and education as well, right? In literacy, using these tools, which I think is quite important. And anything else you'd like to tell us in terms of the strategic direction you're taking for the coming quarters?
Yeah, well, we had a very successful experience with a new platform called TikTok this year, which was originally recommended by my colleague from IFRC, Dante Licona. And through an informal partnership with the TikTok for Good team, we were able to become the second most followed UN agency after WHO, which for IOM is quite unprecedented. Usually we struggle for recognition because our branding is not exactly speaking very popular, or IOM hasn't traditionally invested a lot of money in communication. It's more of an operational agency. Most of the money, is spent in the field to help migrants, returnees, people who are trafficked, etc. So TikTok has been a very interesting experience this year, and now we have 1.6 million followers. We're also exploring new ways to interact with digital communities through messaging applications, Viber, WhatsApp, Telegram, and we're also hoping to create a space through weekly podcasts and live streaming where we can actually give more space to specialists. We understand that as a social media specialist, we often ask senior colleagues to simplify their message because we want to be able to reach as many people as possible. And that's, of course, the way social media works. However, we understand that there is the need for more balanced, more specialized, more thorough conversations. So giving a chance to more senior staff or experts from IOM and outside the organization to meet online and maybe have a conversation on counter trafficking or returnee or the Mediterranean for maybe 30 to 45 minutes would be also an interesting niche for those who are interested in learning more about all the massive amount of work that IOM does that we're often not very good at communicating, because there are, as a project-based organization, over 2,700 projects being managed across 173 missions. So you understand that for a small division like ours, it can be very challenging. So I'm trying to diversify the content as much as I can, and thankfully I have a very smart and talented group of people working with me, especially in my social media unit. I'm the oldest, but I have some young people who are way more talented than me on social media and have spearheading some interesting ideas that we will launch at the end of the summer.
But is that true that not necessarily young people are better at social media. We have lots of great accounts on Twitter that are much older too. So I think it's a little bit of an ageist take, I must say, because it has to do with education, like the background you have, for instance, you know, a PhD in political history, in the history of diplomacy, you know, your work with different organizations as a communications officer. I think that informs much more because the tools change, right? The software changes, but you know, it's the capacity. I think it's not necessarily being young. It's a good thing. You know, it's have the right training.
Oh,
I
of
think
course.
they
I
have.
mean,
They are working under your leadership, perhaps that helps. You know, because the
I,
tools, the software one can learn, right?
I agree. I mean, there are a couple of things to say. I would say young people are much quicker than maybe me or people who are older than me in learning how to use an application. However, they need guidance in the sense that often or sometimes they will not, the same way I was when I was in school or just as a fresh graduate. Sometimes the overexcitement of a young person needs to be balanced with also the political understanding of the context and the framework. However, we are led by head of communication Leonard Doyle, who is a journalist, who was a trained journalist was an editor at the Independent, and he himself is a very active person, somebody who embraces change quickly. So I've been learning a lot from him, and I've tried to keep the same approach with people in my team. I don't like, he doesn't like to micromanage people. He gives us a lot of freedom, and he trusts us. So I'd like to think that I can do the same. So people in my unit, they bring in new ideas, and you know, sometimes I have questions, but I enjoy seeing them being proactive and you know, owning the platforms. Just to give you one last example, the person who is in charge of our TikTok account, which is currently IAM's largest digital platforms worldwide, is very young. She's only 21. She joined us last January from New York, and she's still working with us remotely because she was extremely talented and very smart. But she is owning the content on the platform and all the production. And all I did was at the beginning, you know, train her a little bit, and then slowly she gained confidence and she started to be the focal point person for such platforms. So I'm involved, of course, when it comes to strategic decisions, but she is fully in charge of posting content on the platform, and I do appreciate this way of working because it creates an environment that I think is more creative and less prone to micromanagement, which I think sometimes the UN suffers from. So far so good for us, and it's an interesting year despite COVID. It's been challenging. We've worked way more than last year. Working from home hasn't been easy at the beginning, especially, but so far we've had interesting results, and we're hoping to continue working with you know, the media, with social media specialists outside the organization, and always improve.
And the International Organization for Migration has become an UN, an agency of part of the UN system recently, right? Until what, 3 years ago, it was a standalone organization. Maybe it was older than the United Nations Refugees Agency, but it became a standalone organization. What do you see are the changes coming from that structure, that changing structure?
Well, we are a United Nations related organization right now. So we are not strictly speaking a UN agency, but we're a UN related agency since the UNGA in 2016, when our previous Director General Williams Lace's Wing signed an agreement with Ban Ki-moon in New York. It was a very important day for us, and we're still adapting to, you know, being part of the UN family as let's say the youngest sibling, we could say, even though our history dates back to 1951, when IOM was created to manage resettlement operations of displaced Europeans in the wake of World War II. I think I cannot speak on behalf of the Office of the Director General, but I can comfortably say that COVID-19 has certainly been a perfect storm for many agencies, including IOM, and our senior management is now working to adapt the agency to the needs of this new era that we are entering, and also to adapt our budget structure to such needs. And I think the agency will change in the foreseeable future. I think also what the mandate of the agency is will expand to new and different ventures, because as we know, mobility after COVID-19 has been heavily affected. And we have to somehow rebuild mobility as a whole. And I think IOM as a strategic partner for governments or member states, civil society, NGOs, academia, should have definitely a voice in the chapter to build a safer world where migration continues for the benefits of host communities, for the benefits of migrants, the refugees, for the benefits of internally displaced people that we also assist, for the benefits of returnees or people who are trafficked. Most of the abuses in human trafficking and other areas against migrants, and not just xenophobia, but other abuses as well, haven't stopped during the pandemic. And it's our duty to find solutions that will help the people we are mandated to protect, to assist, and to empower into a safer world for the benefits of also migrants, not just host communities in the global north.